The desert wind sang its hollow tune over the scorched rocks of Veralia Prime, a desolate outpost of a forgotten war. Jagged cliffs jutted from the ground like the bones of a long-dead titan, and the horizon shimmered beneath twin suns that never seemed to sleep. This planet wasn't home. Not to Nick. But it was the last place left to send someone like him. A ghost with a gun. Nick stood motionless atop a dune, his pale skin nearly glowing in the amber light. His rifle was slung across his back, hands resting calmly on his belt. As he surveyed the valley below, a crashed shuttle smoldered in the distance, metal warped, glass fractured like frozen lightning. The distress signal had pinged less than an hour ago, and Command had sent him, just him. They always did. He didn't ask why anymore. There were no squads, no reinforcements. Just Nick. Boots crunching sand, he descended toward the wreckage. His presence was silent, surgical. He moved like the desert didn't deserve to feel him. Near the broken hull, something shifted. A flash of red, not flame, but flesh. Nick raised his rifle without hesitation, scanning. Then he saw her. She stepped into the open like a specter born of alien fire. Her skin wasn't painted red. It was red, deep crimson, like oxidized blood. Under moonlight, her eyes were silver pools rimmed in gold, unblinking and ancient. And though her armor was torn and her movements limping, she held herself like royalty that had survived a massacre. Nick didn't lower his rifle. "You injured?" She tilted her head, voice smooth but unfamiliar. "Your language? Primitive. But yes. Identify yourself. Name is Sophie. I was not meant to fall here." Her words weren't cocky, but there was something about them, measured, controlled, as if everything she said had gone through a filter older than he could. Comprehend. Nick approached slowly, rifle still aimed. "You're not from the Coalition. You don't wear our flag. What are you?" Sophie took a step back and sat down on a shattered panel. "A survivor. My ship was not meant to crash. You will not understand where I come from." Nick knelt across. From her, "Try me." Silence fell. The wind screamed across the valley. And then Sophie did something strange. She touched the scorched earth beside her, as if it could speak for her. "I come from Erethus," she finally said. "Our kind ... was human once, but evolved, reborn in the heat of our dying sun. We left Earth behind before your empires rose, before your wars stained the stars." Nick squinted. "A lost colony?" She nodded. "No longer lost. We are returning." Nick stared at her, pale hand tightening around the grip of his rifle. This wasn't just another crash. It was a prelude to something bigger, something buried in time and dust and blood. "Why?" "Now?" he asked. "Why return?" Sophie looked up, her voice low. "Because we have seen what's coming. And we need you, Nick. You, not your armies." Nick felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. "You know my name." She smiled. "We've known it for a long time." And just like that, the silence between them turned into something else, something coiled and breathing. The stars above remained silent, but Nick knew it then. The war he thought had ended was only a preface. And this red stranger from the dark, corners of humanity's forgotten past, had just pulled him into a new one. Asterisk. The jungle of Therion 6 did not welcome visitors. Its towering red-leaved trees whispered secrets in a language older than human memory, their trunks veined with bioluminescence that pulsed like a heartbeat. Razorvine curled around the ruins of long-lost alien architecture, and the thick air shimmered with moisture and heat. Every footfall snapped something ancient. Every breath tasted like rust, and Sapgotnik moved with the precision of a soldier pail. Skin painted with grime and ash, eyes scanning every angle of the foliage. His boots were heavy, each step a silent negotiation with the unknown. This was no ordinary recon mission. Command hadn't told him why he was sent here alone, only that something powerful, something other had been detected in this quadrant, something they needed to understand or control. He crouched behind a gnarled root, raising his scanner. Nothing. Again. Static dot, but then he heard it. Not the groan of Therian's trees or the skittering of camouflaged predators. No, this was different. A low, resonant hum like a voice sung beneath breath. He turned swiftly, gun raised, and there she stood. A figure against the blood-red forest, motionless. Ethereal. Her skin shimmered like molten copper and living ember, veins of soft light pulsing. Beneath her surface, she wasn't armored, wasn't armed just ... Watching. Her eyes were crystalline silver, wide, curious, unblinking. Her crimson-red form looked forged rather than born, as if sculpted from the dying light of a sun. Nick lowered his weapon by inches, his breath catching. She took a step forward, then another. Her feet didn't disturb the ground. No tracks. Number. Sound. She tilted her head not in threat, but in analysis. Study. Like she'd never seen someone like him before. And perhaps she hadn't. He tried to speak, but she was already reaching out, not with a hand, but with something deeper. A pulse of emotion hit his chest like a wave. Confusion, sadness, and intense loneliness. It wasn't words. It wasn't telepathy. It was feeling. Nick gritted his teeth, steadied himself. Who are you? He managed to whisper. Her lips didn't move, but he felt her name. Not spoken, not written. Known. Sophie. The moment her identity pressed into his mind, the jungle seemed to respond. Trees groaning, light dimming, wind twisting unnaturally. Sophie's gaze dropped to the scanner in his hand, then to the weapon. Slung at his back, she touched her chest. A gesture of peace. Trust, or maybe a warning. Meek understood. She wasn't the danger. She was the warning of it. And before he could speak again, the sky cracked open with a violent roar. A breach in the din. Clouds, a tremor in the ground. The real threat had followed him. And now it had found her. Nick lay on the cold floor of the alien medbay, his breath shallow, limbs bound by invisible restraints that hummed with energy. His pale skin, usually a badge of discipline and endurance, was now slick with sweat and bruised from the brutal impact of the crash and the abduction. Fluorescent blue light pulsed overhead, casting distorted shadows across the curved walls. The architecture was unmistakably non-human, organic, fluid, like the ship itself was breathing. Across the room, Sophie stood, silent. She was not like the others. Her skin, deep, vibrant crimson, seemed to absorb the cold light rather than reflect it. A subtle bioluminescence pulsed beneath her skin, especially near her collarbones and cheeks. Tall, elegant, and composed, she wore a smooth, scale-like armor that looked grown rather than forged. Her eyes, a fierce copper hue, bore no malice but also no sympathy. Not yet. Nick strained against the restraints. You gonna interrogate me? Or just stare me down until I pass out? Sophie didn't respond right away. Instead, she walked forward, her movements fluid and weightless, almost feline. When she spoke, her voice was unexpectedly soft, tinged with something unplaceable. Not an accent, something older. You fought to the end, even when the sentience core burned your dropship from the sky. You kept firing. Nick smirked weakly. I'm stubborn like that. I saw your wounds, she said, circling him slowly. You covered your squad's retreat while your armor melted. You dragged your captain from the wreckage. You held off 3 of our hunters alone, with a broken rifle and half a lung. Nick didn't respond this time, but his eyes watched her closely now, wary. I was ordered to bring you in alive, she said. So I did. Why me? He asked. You don't strike me as someone who follows orders blindly. Sophie's gaze flickered. Something stirred in her. You're not like the others. You don't kill for glory. You kill because you have to. Nick laughed bitterly. That's supposed to make me noble? No, she said flatly. But it makes you human. And right now, I need someone human. That caught him off guard. Sophie turned away, moving to a console. Symbols lit up beneath her fingers, glyphs that shimmered, alive with motion. The restraints around Nick loosened with a hiss, and he slumped forward, catching himself with a grunt. He looked up at her. You're helping me escape? No, she replied. I'm recruiting you. Nick laughed again, but it was dry and weak. I'm not in the mood to betray my species. Sophie's expression hardened. Your species already betrayed you? They sent your team into a slaughter. The transmission that led you here, Nick interrupted. It came from a downed civilian cruiser. No, she said. It was a trap. The signal was synthesized. You weren't sent to rescue civilians. You were bait. Silence dropped like a curtain between them. Nick's jaw clenched. He wanted to disbelieve her. But deep down, something in her voice, the absence of triumph, rang true. What do you want from me? He asked. Sophie looked at him, and for the first time, her eyes softened. To survive. She pulled a small object from her side, a shard of dark glass etched with golden circuitry. This is forbiddance. If I'm caught sharing it, I'll be executed. Nick frowned. What is it? Sophie took a breath. A map. To the hollow gate. If we find it first, there's a chance to end this war. Nick leaned back, blood drying. On his neck, mind reeling from the revelations. And for the first time since the crash, something else flared in his chest. Not fear, not anger. Hope. He looked up at her. And let's find it. Sophie extended her hand, and the soldier reached out to the stranger with crimson skin, sealing a fragile alliance that could shape the fate of two worlds. Asterisk, the gunmetal sky above the outpost cracked with a deep, unnatural rumble like the growl of a living planet. Nick stood on the elevated overlook, his pale skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. The wind bit into him with icy fingers, but his focus was locked on the valley below, where Sophie stood in the open, alone, glowing, not from the stars, nor from artificial light. She burned. A crimson shimmer pulsed from her body like slow lightning. Beneath her skin, her arms were outstretched, eyes shut, lips parting as if chanting in a forgotten tone. The earth at her feet rippled. The snow that had settled over the valley hissed and turned to vapor. And all around her, the planet her. Planet seemed to awaken. Nick's radio crackled. Commander? What the hell is that thing doing? Orders? He didn't answer. Couldn't. What he was seeing defied logic, but his instincts whispered something far more dangerous. She wasn't causing destruction. She was summoning something. And it was listening. Sophie's glow intensified until it was blinding. The deep red of her skin became almost translucent, showing faint branching networks of bioluminescent energy coursing through her like a second bloodstream. And then suddenly she dropped to her knees. Nick was already moving by the time he reached her. The snow had melted in a perfect circle around her body. Steam coiled around them like serpents. He knelt, grabbing her shoulders, shaking her gently. Sophie, look at me. Her eyes fluttered open. They were no longer blue, but glowing white. You shouldn't have followed, she whispered, her voice layered hers, and something ancient echoing beneath it. Nick froze. What did you do? Her breath hitched. I reached into the veins, into the planet. I thought I could. A tremor cut her off. Beneath them, the earth cracked, not with violence, but with purpose. A jagged structure rose from the ground, as if exhumed from memory itself. Black metal, fused with root-like tendrils. A monolith, pulsing red like a heartbeat. Nick helped her stand. You activated something. No, Sophie said, swaying. I woke it. Behind them, alarms began to scream from the outpost. Sensors. We're detecting life forms approaching, but not from above or afar. From beneath. Nick looked at the monolith, then back at her. You knew this was here. I felt it calling me since you arrived, she murmured. This planet isn't dead. It remembers. And now it remembers you. A low, grinding moan echoed from the cavernous opening at the base of the monolith. Pale lights like ghostly eyes began to flicker in the shadows. Nick raised his rifle, instincts kicking in. But Sophie placed a hand on the barrel, and gently lowered it. They're not here to fight, she said. Not yet. They're here to judge. Judge what? She turned to him, her voice barely a breath. Whether you're worth saving. And then the ground split further, and the first of the Guardians of Corlite emerged. Asterisk. The cold winds of Astron 4 howled through the abandoned outpost as Nick tightened his grip on his rifle. He moved cautiously along the crumbling corridors, the red emergency lights flickering above, giving everything a hellish glow. Behind him, Sophie moved like a ghost, silent, fluid, the faint shimmer of her crimson skin gleaming beneath her black hood. Her eyes darted through the darkness with unnatural ease, perceiving more than Nick ever could. They had been following a faint signal, one that pulsed like a heartbeat through the static of Nick's combs. The outpost had once belonged to the Alliance, until it was mysteriously abandoned over a decade ago. Now, it stood as a haunted shell of its former self, and according to Sophie, it might hold answers to the questions she never dared to ask. A loud. Nick stopped near a partially collapsed hallway, scanning it with the flickering HUD in his visor. Anything? He asked. Sophie paused, closing her eyes briefly. Her skin seemed to pulse with energy, subtly shifting like liquid fire. There's something below, she whispered. Not human. Not alive either. Nick didn't question her senses. He had long stopped doing that. She could hear things. He couldn't. Feel signals buried deep beneath stone and steel. Together, they descended into the underbelly of the outpost, each step echoing like gunshots in the tomb-like silence. They reached a sealed blast door. Sophie placed her hand on it, her skin glowing brighter, as if responding to some unseen resonance. The lock hissed and melted away like wax. Nick glanced at her, still amazed, even after all this time, that her touch could command technology like a language she was born into. Behind the door was a vault, a circular room filled with alien architecture. Strange, pulsing crystals jutted from the walls. In the center stood a pillar, wrapped in spidery veins of glowing red, humming faintly. Sophie approached it slowly, reverently, as if it called to her. This isn't Alliance tech, Nick muttered, scanning the structure. No, Sophie replied. It's Sorellan, my people, or what they used to be. Nick blinked. Sophie had never talked about her origins in such detail before. She had told him fragments about her exile, about her modified blood, but nothing like this. She reached out to the pillar, her palm resting gently on its surface. Images flashed around the room, projections of her world, her people, and horrors. That twisted Nick's stomach. Cities of crystal torn apart by war. Red-skinned warriors falling in droves to an unseen force. And at the heart of it all, a figure with eyes like black stars. A god or a tyrant? Sophie gasped and fell to her knees. Nick rushed to her, catching her before she hit the cold floor. Sophie, what happened? She clutched his chest plate, her breathing ragged. It's not just memory. It's a warning. The one who did this is coming here, to Earth. Nick froze. Who? He demanded. She looked up at him, eyes wide with both fear and fury. His name is Varnax. He was once a guardian of my kind. Now he's something else, something worse. He consumes worlds. And he's looking for me. The room suddenly trembled, as if awakened by her words. The red crystals pulsed erratically. A deafening hum filled the chamber. Sophie pulled herself up and staggered back toward the entrance. "We need to go," she said. "Now." As they ran, Nick realized the war they were preparing for had just evolved. Sophie wasn't just a survivor, she was a key. And Varnax, he wasn't just a threat. He was coming, and the universe would burn if they weren't ready. Asterisk. The oppressive silence of the underground tunnels was shattered by the sudden eruption of gunfire, staccato bursts echoing off the metallic walls, like a storm of thunderclaps. Nick's breath was ragged, sweat dripping down his pale face as he dove behind a rusted support beam, heart pounding like a war drum out behind him. Footsteps pounded relentlessly, the unmistakable cadence of trained soldiers, his own squad, but they were not coming to rescue. No, these were hunters. Sophie's crimson skin glowed faintly in the dim light, her lithe form slipping through shadows with unnatural grace. She moved beside Nick, her eyes burning with fury and fear. "They were ordered to capture me. Ed. Or alive," she hissed, voice low yet sharp enough to cut through the chaos. Nick gritted his teeth. "Why? What did you tell them?" "Nothing," Sophie replied. "I'm a threat to their secrets." A new volley of gunfire rattled the tunnel, this time dangerously close. Nick returned fire, precise and deadly, each shot a desperate plea for survival. They ducked behind debris, their breath mingling in the cold, stale air dot as they retreated deeper into the labyrinth. Sophie's hands began to glow, red light gathering, swirling like embers in a dying fire. With a whisper, her palms flared, and a searing wave erupted, melting steel and incinerating the advancing soldiers who dared cross their path. Nick stared in awe and terror. Sophie was not just a survivor. She was a weapon forged in the crucible of a forgotten war. "We need to keep moving," she said urgently. "The pulse heart is close. It's the only way to end this." Suddenly, a piercing shriek tore through the air. From the darkness emerged monstrous silhouettes, bioengineered hunters twisted by alien technology, their forms half metal, half flesh, eyes glowing with predatory malice. Nick felt the cold edge of panic, but Sophie's grip tightened on his arm. Together, she breathed, with renewed resolve. They fought side by side, Nick's disciplined tactics complementing Sophie's raw, devastating power. The tunnels became a battleground of fire and shadows, a desperate dance between life and oblivion. Amidst the chaos, Nick realized this battle was only the beginning. The true war lay ahead, a war not just for survival, but for the soul of two worlds. Asterisk, the chamber was vast, an ancient cathedral, carved from obsidian and etched with glowing crimson runes that pulsed rhythmically like a living heartbeat. At its center rested the pulse heart, a colossal crystalline engine suspended in a cradle of metallic veins that hummed with dormant power. Its facets shimmered with untold energy, casting fractured rainbows across the walls. Nick and Sophie stood before it, their breaths shallow, bodies battered but unbroken. The scars of their journey marked them, his pale skin streaked with grime and blood, her crimson flesh faintly aglow with residual power. Between them, the weight of a universe's fate pressed like a crushing gravity. Outside the chamber, war was coming. Earth's command fleet loomed in orbit, sleek warships bristling with armaments, ready to seize the pulse heart's power for their own dominion. But far worse than human ambition stirred deep beneath an ancient parasitic entity, the Devourer, awakened by the pulse heart's stirring, now slithering toward the core with insatiable hunger. Nick's fingers trembled as he reached for the pulse heart's control interface. The crystalline surface responded, humming to his touch. "This is it," he said quietly. We can end this war either by giving Earth an unstoppable weapon or by restoring your planet. Sophie's eyes glimmered with fierce resolve. The Pulse Heart can save Emeria, but if it falls into their hands, Earth will become a prison. Their minds raced, the stakes impossibly high. Suddenly, alarms blared. The chamber's entrance burst open. Earth soldiers poured in armed, determined, unwilling to let ancient secrets slip away. "Step aside," a commander barked. "This belongs to Earth now." Nick and Sophie stood firm, backs to the Pulse Heart. "We won't let you unleash destruction," Sophie declared, her voice ringing with power. The Devourer's tendrils began to seep through the chamber walls, dark, writhing shadows that twisted reality itself. In that moment, Nick realized there was no time for hesitation. He turned to Sophie. "There's a third way. We don't have to choose Earth or Emeria." Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Nick touched the Pulse Heart again, eyes blazing with sudden clarity. "We link it to both worlds. We create a bridge, a gateway, not a weapon." Sophie's lips parted in awe. "Together," he said, "we merge Emberia's ancient tech with Earth's resources. We form an alliance, something new." The Devourer shrieked, lashing out with corrosive fury, but Nick and Sophie activated the Pulse Heart's core. A blinding surge of energy cascaded outward, red and blue streams intertwining. The chamber, shaking as a shimmering stargate, blossomed between realms. Earth's soldiers froze. Awestruck, Sophie grasped Nick's hand, their energy merging in a radiant blaze. "The war ends here," she whispered. The Devourer recoiled, shrieking as the gateway severed its path. When the light faded, silence reigned. Nick and Sophie stood, no longer just soldier and alien, but emissaries of a new dawn. Years had passed since the Pulse Heart's light bridged two worlds. Where once there were only ashes and silence, now stood the first colony, a delicate tapestry woven from the hopes of Earth and Emberia. Alike, beneath twin suns that bathed the land in hues of sapphire and crimson, a child ran barefoot through fields of glowing flora. Pale skin streaked with veins of shimmering red, a living testament to unity, forged in fire and sacrifice. Nick watched from the edge of the settlement, his weathered face softened by a rare smile. Beside him stood Sophie, her crimson eyes bright. With quiet pride, they were no longer just soldier and alien. They were pioneers of a new era. "The war changed us," Sophie said softly, "but it did not define us." Nick nodded, voice steady as the gentle breeze. "We chose to build, not destroy. To understand, not conquer." The child paused, looking up at the vast sky where stars from both worlds twinkled as one. Where fire met frost, Nick whispered, "Life began again." And under those red skies over blue oceans, a fragile peace blossomed, one born not from victory, but from the courage to hope beyond the past.